Right where Pastor Sean is. Pastor Sean, would you raise your hand and wave a little bit? Right there, boys and girls. Just follow him. I'm thankful we have enough food for everybody but Sean. No, we have more than enough food, and I want to again mention that all of you are welcome to attend the luncheon right afterwards. We have a big Thanksgiving-style luncheon. I'd like to say thank you to all the people who have worked so hard making that possible. Many of you have made food and brought it this morning. Even if you didn't bring food, feel free to be our guest. But I want to say thank you to those who were here yesterday as well, who worked so hard trying to get things ready for today. You'll see when you go out in the gym, all the decorations, a lot of cleaning was done, and various activities to prepare for today. And I'm thankful for so many people who helped make that happen. I want to say a special thanks to two people, though, who have put an awful lot of work into it. One is Todd Mitchell. If you see Todd, he is the chairman of our deacon board. That guy is a workhorse. Man, he just keeps going and going and going. He spent several of his days off at various times here at the church just volunteering. He has a regular job that he works through the week, but coming in and making sure things get done. And then Darlene Royster. Darlene has been in charge of all of the food and making sure we have the right kind of food and everything. So if you see those two people, give them a special thanks if you know them, if you would. I know that would help them to feel appreciated. Let me give you directions on how to get to the meal now before the end of the service in case I forget. Sometimes I forget things. So first of all, at the end of the service, we're going to allow all of our visitors, we'll let anybody who's handicapped in any way to go first. We'll let them go. You can go right out this doorway, right here, all the way and out that way, or you can go out this door and around and back in toward the gymnasium. Then we would like to dismiss our visitors and allow our visitors to go right after that because you're our guest today. And then finally, those of you who are regular attenders here at Grace Bible Church, we'll go last. We'll go after all of the visitors go. So and again, you can go out that door down to the end and out the back door. You could go out this door if you want. Just be careful. There's a little bit of a steep ramp right there. You can go out that door. Or you can go out this door and again sort of make a U-turn when you go out the door and head toward the big double-story building. If you don't know where the gym is, you'll see it when you walk out there, and everybody else will be heading that way. Or just smell the air. Smell the air. You'll smell the ham and the turkey sort of drifting through the air, and follow your nose. You'll make it. I thought I had met the girl that I wanted to marry 3 different times. What happened? Well, I changed my mind twice. Why, you may be thinking? Because my feelings changed. And so my mind changed as well. Now you may be thinking, well, what happened the third time? By the third time, I had learned after the first 2 to look for a girlfriend and a potential spouse based not on feelings or looks alone, but on virtue and character qualities. I got my mind involved in the decision as much as my feelings. Have you ever had your feelings change about something or someone? Some kids hate broccoli, and you can tell them that they should like broccoli, but that doesn't change their feelings. You can command it, but it usually doesn't work. The Bible has a lot to say about being thankful. And one of the things that we'll see is that thankfulness, and that I want to emphasize this morning, is that thankfulness is not based on feelings, because feelings change. Thankfulness ought to be based on biblical truth. In 1 Chronicles chapter 16, verses 8 and 9, it says, "Give thanks to the Lord, call on His name, make known among the nations what He has done. Sing to Him, sing praise to Him, tell of all His wonderful acts." In Psalm 100 verse 4, "Enter His gates with thanksgiving, and His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him and praise His name." Philippians chapter 4 verse 6 in the New Testament, Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And then finally in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18, and this is only a very, very small selection of scriptures that encourage the people of God to give thanks to God. 1 Thessalonians 5:18, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. How can we give thanks to God in all circumstances? Again, verse 18 of chapter 5, give thanks in all circumstances. How can we do that? Because so many circumstances in life seem to be of a negative nature. They're oftentimes not what we would desire or what we would wish. And if we base our thanksgiving on feelings, it will be hard to give thanks during those circumstances. In fact, it may even be impossible. Feelings about presidents, feelings about wars, feelings about issues, even feelings about Jesus. I mean, if you look at the New Testament, we see the feelings of the people change greatly from Palm Sunday, when they herald him as the Messiah, when they were shouting, Hosanna to the Son of God in the highest, as they celebrated his entrance into Jerusalem, to 1 week later, when the crowds were shouting, crucify him, crucify him. Feelings change. And if we base our thanksgiving on feelings, it will be almost impossible to be thankful, as the Scriptures tell us to do, in all circumstances. God, apparently, according to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18, and some of the other passages we've read, commands his people to be thankful. Again, you can't do that if you base it on your feelings. I could say to you today, you will love spinach. But if you don't love spinach, you're not going to love it just because I told you to, are you? And chances are you won't be thankful if you find out that all of the vegetables in the back today are spinach. That's true. I hope there's some mashed potatoes, because what I do is I bury my spinach in the mashed potatoes, put a lot of butter on it, and it's okay. Then I can eat it. Otherwise, I don't like spinach. I could command you, you will love tomato juice. But if you don't like tomato juice, you'll be like me. I feel like throwing up after tomato juice. I don't know about you, but I love ketchup. That's the weird thing. I put ketchup on everything. I love ketchup, but I can't stand tomato juice. But if I command you to love tomato juice, you won't be able to do it simply because I command you to do it. If I tell you you will like liver and onions, which, by the way, is the most common dish we have on Thanksgiving. No, I'm just joking. It's turkey and ham. But if I were to say to you, you will love liver and onions, some of you would say, no way, Pastor Dean, I will never love liver and onions. And it's not just with foods, it's with all sorts of things. I could command, you will love golf. You know, the sport. They call it a sport. I'm not sure why they call it a sport, but they call it. I don't like golf. Golf does nothing but frustrate me. I suppose if I was better at it, it would be okay. But I remember the last time I played golf, I lost about 17 different balls in that little pond over here at the golf course up in this subdivision north of here. I forget the name of it. Say it again? No. Sea Pines. We used to go up there when it was $10 to play golf, and you got a golf cart, and you got to play for $10. It was the cheapest place around, so who cares about the green conditions, you know? We just had a lot of fun driving those golf carts and, you know, going up and down the hills, racing each other. But I lost 17 golf balls in that little pond at the end there, and I thought, that's it, I'm never playing this. I finally picked up the last golf ball, and I threw it to get it over the water. I'm just lousy at it. And if you say to me, hey, Pastor Dean, let's go play some golf after church today, no way. And you can say, but it's fun. You'll enjoy it. No, I won't. I know my feelings about golf. Well, the same thing is true about the circumstances of life. If we try to be thankful in negative situations, we can't do it if we base the thankfulness simply on the way we feel about it. And so Scripture teaches us that rather than basing our thankfulness on feelings, it ought to be based on biblical truth. Now, what are those biblical truths that can help us to be thankful? I'd like to share with you 5 different biblical truths that help us to be thankful in any type of situation. First of all, the truth that there is a God. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." Folks, if there is a God, that changes everything. Really, I mean, just that one fact alone changes everything. That means there is a supreme being who more than likely, we could say, well, maybe he didn't create us, but in some way was involved in creating us. I believe by divine fiat that he commanded, and it was so. Some people, which I would strongly disagree with, believe through a process of theistic evolution. But nonetheless, they would have to come to some sort of conclusion that there is a supreme being in the universe. And if there is, then it's logical to believe that that being is interested in us because we exist. And if he brought us into being, there must be some reason for bringing us into being. And so there's a purpose. Life isn't just all about chance. We're not here just to go through life with no purpose, no reason, and no rhyme to living. I mean, if that were the case, then when life really gets tough, we'd be better just checking out. Why go through the pain and difficulty of some situations? If there is a God, then that means that we are probably accountable to that God, that there will be some sort of judgment in the end. And so as we contemplate the existence of a God, the fact of a God in and of itself changes everything. Of course, the Bible teaches very strongly that there is a personal God, a loving God, a God who has done some things in the Bible that we don't understand that still fit in with his love and his mercy and his grace. And so if we contemplate the fact that there is a God, it is first and foremost one of the reasons why we can be thankful. In Isaiah 45:18 it says, "For this is what the Lord says, He who created the heavens, He is God. He who fashioned and made the earth, He founded it. He did not create it to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited. He says, I am the Lord, and there is no other." In Revelation chapter 4, verse 11, it says, "You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being." In Psalm chapter 14, verse 1, and actually I don't have it listed up here, but in Psalm 14:1, it's a passage many of you are familiar with. It simply says, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. Now why is that true? Why is it that the fool says in his heart that there is no God? Because God has placed multiple evidences in the universe around us that testify to His existence. We see this even in the Scriptures when Psalm 19:1 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of His hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge." How do the heavens testify to God and the existence of God? How do they proclaim the work of His hands? Well, let me give you 2 suggestions. First of all, things in this world have design and order and complexity. Everything around us has design, order, and complexity. We've talked about this in the past, but all you have to do is take a few moments to begin to study either physics or chemistry or biology, any of the sciences, and rather than them pointing away from the existence of a God, they clearly point to the existence of God. Organized systems do not come about by chance. Complexity does not come about by chance. Chaos cannot bring it about. The human body, according to the Bible, is fearfully and wonderfully made. It tells us that in Psalm 139, verse 13, where it says, "You created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." As we look at the human body by itself, we see a huge amount of design and complexity. We see relationships that could in no wise come about simply by chance. For example, what we call the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle, the process whereby our cells make what we call adenosine triphosphate, ATP. It's the chemical energy of our cells. It's what our cells use to create energy. It happens in the mitochondria. Inside of the cells, there's about 14 little different organelles. I know some of you hate biological lessons, but That's where you see the complexity of the human being. There is a miniature universe inside of every human being's cell. It's a complex organism in and of itself. We see a drop of blood and we look at it and go, oh man, there's nothing to it. Yet there are 5 million cells in the average drop of blood. And every one of those cells have 14 little organelles that work together in such a way to cause that cell to function, to do what it does to give you life. The Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle, study it. It's an extremely complicated process that simply allows the cell to take oxygen and make it into energy. But it's what allows you to live. And there's no way it could happen by chance. It's too complicated. It's too complicated. That's why when Dr. Crick, one of the co-discoverers of DNA back I think in 1954, when they discovered the DNA, the double helix model of DNA, you've seen pictures of it in books, I'm sure. Dr. Crick said that there's too much intelligence in DNA for it to come about by chance. So he's the one I told you that wrote the book called Directed Panspermia. His philosophy is very similar to the movie Prometheus. If you've seen the movie Prometheus, where they're looking for intelligent life on other planets because they believe that's where we came from, that intelligent life seeded Earth with DNA so that human beings are the direct offspring of that intelligent life from another planet. But somewhere in the movie, if you see the movie, somewhere in the movie, they mention the fact, well, where did they come from? And that's the natural question. Where did they come from? Dr. Crick, who was not a believer in Jesus Christ, saw the intelligence wrapped up in the DNA molecule and said, there must have been intelligence in the creation of human being, because intelligence doesn't happen in and of itself, by itself. Chaos and chance does not give rise to complexity, to order, to intelligence. It doesn't happen. We recognize that in the practical world of everyday experience, and yet sometimes we deny it in the science classroom. I say sometimes because there are lots of people who are very well trained in the sciences who believe in a God, and oftentimes who believe in Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior as well. In fact, I think there's somewhat of a resurgence in this. There are all sorts of videos and multimedia materials that deal with the topic of what we call ID, intelligent design. And they're put out oftentimes by people who aren't Bible-believing people, but recognize that there has to have been some sort of supreme intelligence that created life, because there's no answer for it in just chaos and chance. And so when we recognize that there is a God, it is first and foremost the premise for giving thanksgiving. Secondly, when we recognize that that God is all-powerful and in control. And premise number 2, or truth number 2, is built upon premise number 1, or truth number 1. That there is a God, and secondly, that He is all-powerful and in control. In Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7, it says, I form the light and create darkness. I bring prosperity and create disaster. I, the Lord, do all these things. You say, what? He creates disaster? I like the I bring prosperity part, but I don't like the I create disaster part. Yes, God creates disaster as well, and has a purpose in it. You say, what could it possibly be? Sometimes it's to chasten His people. The Bible very clearly says that He raised up the Assyrians and the Babylonians for that very specific purpose. He raised up 2 heathen, wicked nations to punish the people of God. Why? Because they turned their backs on Him. And he needed to teach them a lesson. Why did He need to teach them a lesson? Because He loved them and ultimately desired their good. It's like a father who disciplines his child. It may be painful for the moment, but the loving Father understands that in the long run, it will be beneficial. In Isaiah chapter 46, verse 9, it says, remember the former things, those of long ago. I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. From the east I summon a bird of prey. From a far-off land, a man to fulfill my purpose. What I have said, that will I bring about. What I have planned, that will I do. Isaiah is recognizing in this passage the sovereignty of God, that God is in control. His plan will be accomplished. What He has purposed will come about. He will use human instruments, maybe even creatures from the animal kingdom to accomplish his purpose. But the bottom line is he is in control of all that exists. Everything that exists. And it all works together for his sovereign purposes, not for mine. We're talking about that in Sunday school this morning in the college age class. That sometimes we get mad at God when certain things happen that we don't like. The death of a spouse, the death of some other loved one, a child or a parent, the loss of a job, the loss of finances. And we get mad at God. Why do we get mad at God under those circumstances? Because we have expectations about what God is supposed to do. They may not be biblical expectations, but nonetheless we have expectations. God is supposed to make me have a job. God shouldn't take my loved one from me. When the fact of the matter is, every one of you is going to lose every loved one that you have. Or they're going to lose you, one or the other, right? Because we're all going to die, and I don't care what you do. You can chop off your head and have it cryogenically frozen. The bottom line is, you're going to still cease to exist someday in the material body. You're going to die. We're all going to die. We live in a fallen world. It's part of the curse. There's no escaping from it. And the sovereign God is going to work out his plan in this fallen world for his purposes and ultimately for our good if we believe the Scriptures. To bring about what he desires to bring about his kingdom and his glory and his will. And he is in control of that. And so we are able to give thanks because there is a God who is in control of everything. Personally, I didn't vote for Obama. I'm disappointed. I was hoping for change. More than change. I'm looking at our economy and I'm very concerned about it. And I know the president may not be the person who can make all of those changes. We've got to have a House and a Senate that go along with it, and they got to all be working together. But you know what? I also realize at the same time that God is in control. I'm not going to jump off the roof of a tall building because Obama was elected. I'm not going to, oh man, my man didn't make it. Oh. I'm not going to walk around sulking and in despair because Obama was reelected. Because I recognize that God is in control. And there's a reason for him being there. That doesn't mean that we take a fatalistic view toward things and say, well, I'm not even going to bother voting then because God is in control and whoever gets elected, it's God's will and I don't have to take part in the process. No, we're to exercise the rights and the freedoms that we have, and God uses that in the process to bring about his will. There's a reason in the plan of God why Obama was reelected. And all we can do is trust God in relationship to that. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 28, Jesus said, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father. And even the very hairs of your head are numbered. Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father." Nothing escapes God's notice. Nothing escapes God's notice. He knows who was elected in every town across America. I don't. He's in control of all of that. He knows what's happening in your life. He knows why you have a job or why you don't have a job, why you got that raise, why you didn't get that raise, why somebody else got the promotion or why you got the promotion, why you're sick or why somebody else in your family is sick, or why you're healthy or why somebody else in your family is healthy. While whatever is going on in your life, the bottom line is God is aware of that. And there is a purpose and a plan for that. Even the bad things that happen. Even the bad things. God can use those for his purposes. He is in control. Biblical truth number 3. That sovereign God, that all-powerful, in-control God has a plan for your life. He has a plan for your life. Jeremiah 29:11. "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." Now, Jeremiah 29 is addressed to ancient Israel. And in the process, God is explaining to them that he has a plan for them, but they're going to go through some bad times first. They're going to go through 70 years of captivity first. They're going to watch relatives slaughtered by the Babylonians first. They're going to become captive in a foreign nation first. And yet God says to them, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in a future, because the end will be better than the beginning. It reminds me of the story of Job. The end was better than the beginning. Job went through some horrendous things. The loss of his family, the loss of his personal possessions, the loss of his wealth, the loss of his health, everything but the loss of his life. And yet the end of the story, if you read through the book of Job, the end of the story is better than the beginning. Because God blesses Job in marvelous ways. God has a plan for your life. In Psalm 139, the passage we looked at earlier, Psalm 139 verse 16 says, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. That's hard to wrap your mind around, isn't it? All the days of my life were written in His book before one of them came to be. God knew someday that I would be standing up here today at this time preaching this message before I had any thought of it. Before I ever thought of being a preacher. There was a time when that would have been the furthest thought from my mind in high school. In fact, I was sharing with some people the other day, my thoughts in high school were, how can I rob a bank and get away with it? How can I be a bum and not have to work for a living? How can I, and there were a couple of us that we used to sit in the corner and we used to contemplate these things, okay, because we didn't know what we were going to do in life. We were in high school and we're thinking, what are we going to do in life? Well, maybe we can rob a bank and live off the money, go to some foreign country. And that's why I never got a tattoo. Because I thought, I don't want any identifying marks if I ever do that. And you say, man, you're a little warped individual, aren't you? Yes, I was. Thank God for His redemption and His salvation. It changed my life. It changed my life greatly. I was on a path to destruction. I watched a lot of my friends die. A lot of my friends because of drugs or other things. And I was right there with them, heading down the same road they were heading down. And I would have destroyed myself, or somebody else would have destroyed my life had not salvation come into my life. And my life changed drastically. Drastically. My wife knows all of these stories. You've heard a smattering. Some of them I won't even tell you about. I'd be too embarrassed to tell you about. My wife knows most of them. And my wife often says to me, if I would have known you in those days, I wouldn't have looked at you twice. And I don't blame her. I don't. I would have never thought of being a preacher. To me, Christians were all those nerdy guys that wore real thick glasses, pocket protectors, about 10 different pens in there, a protractor, a slide rule, and they just couldn't do anything else in life. And so they went and they learned the Bible and taught the Bible. They became ministers because they couldn't do anything else, sort of like teachers. Come on, I was a teacher. You're saying, now we get it. Yeah, you ever have a parent? I remember a parent saying that, well, those who can do and those who can't teach. That's what they used to say. I don't know, if you're not a teacher, you haven't heard that before. Being a teacher is almost like being a lawyer. You get all those jokes made about you that really have some sort of truth to them. But no, that don't have any truth to them, but people sort of stereotype and make those jokes about. I never thought of being a pastor. And so it amazes me to think of the fact that God knew that before I ever even contemplated it, at a time when I even looked down on people who were Christians. I made fun of my younger brother. He was going off to Bible college, and he got a job to support himself going through Bible college, working on vacuum cleaners. And I remember taunting him and making fun of him. Oh, so you went to Bible college to learn how to work on vacuum cleaners. Ooh. That sounds like an illustrious career. Why waste your money on Bible college? Go to technical school and learn how to work on vacuum cleaners. I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand it. And yet while I was at odds with God, God still had a plan for my life. I would have given up on me. I said, this one's for the junk pile. Right? Send them off. And God has a plan for you. And you're thinking, well, Pastor Dan, you had a really raunchy life. It wasn't as bad as some of yours. And I only say that because I've heard some of your stories too, okay? Some of you have told me your stories. I know, okay, I'm not the only guy who is warped and a little off. I've heard some of those other stories. And yet God had a plan for your life as well. What amazes me is it included a wonderful wife, a God-fearing wife who, somebody said it up here, you could have never dreamed. I mean, such opposites, only God could bring that about. He gave us 3 wonderful children who all go to church, who all know the Lord as their Savior. Is everything perfect in their lives? No. But they're trying still to live for the Lord. He gave us a home that's paid for. He gave me a wonderful congregation to serve in over the last 30 years that puts up with me, that knows me and yet still loves me. I can't. That boggles the mind. That's close to a miracle. Maybe it is a miracle. A wonderful country to live in, a country that is so blessed. Tom was sharing. I'm going to Belarus again in April. Every time I go to Belarus, this would be my 8th or 9th time, I come back and I feel guilty. You know what I feel guilty about? The blessings that we have, that we enjoy in this country. I feel guilty that we have so much compared to so many other people in the world. And it bothers me that we have so much. And I give away things. I go over there and I always take extra money and I give money. There's people that I've made friends, and I give, and I still come back and feel greedy. I still come back and feel guilty simply because we have so much compared to so many other people in the world. God has blessed us. And the amazing thing, you and I had nothing to do with that. You didn't choose to be born here. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose to have a country that enjoys the blessings that it enjoys, and yet we're here and we're enjoying it. And God knew it all along. Why was I born here and somebody else in some other country? I don't know. But I know that God who exists, who is sovereign and all-powerful, who has a plan for me and has a plan for other people, is in control and has allowed it to happen for His purposes. And my responsibility in life is simply to seek to follow His will and to do what pleases Him. And in the process to understand that God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. In Psalm 119, verse 160, it says, "All your words are true, all your righteous laws are eternal." What words are true that would have anything to do with God's purpose for my life? How about Romans chapter 8, verses 28 and following, which says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. For those God foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the likeness of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brethren. And those He predestined, He also called. Those He called, He also justified. Those He justified, He also glorified. What then shall we say in response to this? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, how will He not also, along with Him, graciously give us all things?" Now that doesn't mean everything my heart and soul desires. It means everything that is good for me. Because some things aren't good for me. I love to put tons of butter on my baked potato. And my wife has this horrified look every time I do it. She said, "You're going to die of a heart attack. You're going to die of a..." Probably will. Not only do I put tons of butter on, I put sour cream on top of the butter. And I realized that although that tastes really good and that's what I want, that's probably not good for me. You say, "Well, why don't you change?" I will someday. Someday after the heart attack, yeah. You see, everything that my soul desires isn't necessarily good for me, is it? There are some things. My wife eats a plain baked potato, and she tells me it's good, and I look at her, "You're crazy. Nobody in their right mind eats a plain baked potato and says it's good." You might do it and say, "Okay, this is good for me," and she says, "It's good." She's learned to appreciate that which is best for her. And we have to do the same thing with God's will. There are some things that are not good for us. And so God holds it from us, withholds it from us maybe. Why? Not because we don't want it, we may want it, but because He knows what's best for us. That's what Romans 8 is saying. God works everything together for good to those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. He knows what's best. And even the catastrophes and the calamities and the disasters in life somehow work together for good if you love God. You may not see it now, but you will see it later if you continue with the Lord through life. I can look back now and see how my wife's cancer, was used for God's glory and our good. Many of you know my wife was in stage 3 Hodgkin's disease 8 months after we graduated from college. We were broke. Our son had just been born. She was 23 years old. And I thought, why, God? Why in the world now? We're just out of college. I'm planning on going to seminary. We're going to go into ministry. We're going to serve you. And you bring this into our lives. And at that moment in time, I could not see the good in it. Now we can look back and see the good in it. How that God paid thousands and thousands of dollars in medical bills through the generosity oftentimes of people that we didn't even know. There were churches that heard of what was happening to her, that took up collections and sent us money. People we didn't even know. The insurance commissioner of the state of Florida made our insurance company that we had this cheapy policy with the college that we went to. And what had happened is she got the cancer before the policy ran out, but it was misdiagnosed. They thought it was simply an infection causing the lymph nodes to swell, and so they were treating her for a simple infection. Our insurance ran out. And when we went to file to collect insurance on her laparotomy and then some of the ensuing treatments that she had, the insurance company denied those claims. And so we went to the insurance commissioner. And without any pressure, we just went to him, we told him what had happened, and he looked at the dates on fortunately we save all our receipts from the doctor's visits and saw what had happened and made some phone calls, and before long they were paying the amounts that they were obligated to pay. And we just watched God provide time and time again through that process. And yet we still, even as it was going on, couldn't really see how God was going to use it in our lives. Now we can look back and see. We can look back at the lessons that God taught us through that. And you can talk to my wife about some of those lessons that she learned through that, the value that she has for each and every day of her life. Treasuring the time that she got to spend with her children. Treasuring the time that she's alive. Watching God provide in almost miraculous ways for us. Now we can see Romans chapter 28, but when you're going through it, you can't always see it. You don't always know why, and so what we do is we base our thankfulness not on the way that we feel in the midst of the circumstances, but on the truth that there is a God, that He is all-powerful, that He is sovereign, that He's in control, that He has a plan and a purpose for us, and if we love Him, that plan and purpose is for our good. And when we know that and believe that, we can be thankful no matter what comes our way. We can be like Job, who after he lost all of his children, sat there and said simply to God, "Naked I came into this world, and naked I will depart. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Blessed be the name of the Lord. Let's pray.